A building collapses overnight in Miami, and we still have some live coverage going on what's going on over there. So we will talk just a bit about that and see if we can't get an idea of what happened with that. I have not read a thing into this, so I'm going into this just as fresh as you are, but we will go and have a look at this and see what's going on. John McAfee dies by an apparent suicide in a jail cell in Barcelona. A lot of people have questions, and so do I, so we'll talk just a bit about that. The President of the United States has come up with a new gun control plan, and did he go down the same route as Swalwell? Well, we'll see if we can get to the bottom of that. We'll watch the video and see what goes on with that, and where that goes, and what that means for the rest of us here. And the Supreme Court has another series of decisions, including the fated one about the cheerleader case. So we'll go over all of those as well. It's going to be all this and more over on Contemporary. Hey, 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 do you trust the plan yet? I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. What a weird news cycle, you guys. I mean, it's not as long as some of them I've had, but I mean, regardless of that, it's all over the place. We've got the president doing stupid shit. We've got McAfee, who passed away with a weird Q on his Instagram somewhere. And the guy who said that if he kills himself, it certainly was foul play. So we're going to talk about all this Miami thing. And that just cropped up, because that wasn't there last night when I went to bed either. So it's going to be all this and more. We're going to get through it all. We're going to see what we can figure out from that. But before we get started, as I go and set the live chat back up so I can see what you guys are saying, and you guys would tell me if I didn't have my microphone on, right? Head on over and check out my friends over at the Freedom Scoop Media Group, where we carry such great shows as The Generational Gap, The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, and The Freckles and Brit Show. Head on over there and check out all of my friends while we get our website finished and finalized. Yeah, I know, I've been saying that for 4 months. Mea culpa. I am working with somebody else to get this done, but mea culpa, we'll get this up here because I do want you to go over there and check out all of my friends and help us support great creators as well. So go over there and check that out. All right, let's look in at your finance for the day, starting, of course, with the Dow, which struggled, is a good word for it. They tried to hold that line throughout the day. It went up and it went down, and it just kind of danced around that line and just kind of dropped off at the end of the day. The Dow ended at 33,874.24 points. That is 0.21% down from where it was the day before. 71.34 points down. Your Bitcoin, however, had a nice showing yesterday. As we were talking yesterday morning about the fact that it fell down below 30,000 for the first time since, I think it was last year. I think it was just in the 20,000 range last year for the last time. But it fell down below 30,000 for the first time. And now it's back up to 34,000 once again. So we will pay attention to this. Congratulations to everybody who got some Bitcoin while it was on sale. But we will see what happens with that. All right, on your fuel. The Costco is a $2.69 up in Madison. Looks like the Fleet Farm is also $2.69, but we're also starting to see some other ones creep up. Some ones that we used to see down below, $2.73, $2.77, a little bit more in the $2.80 range, a little bit of $2.89. So we're creeping right back up to that $3 a gallon range. So we will see what happens with that. A lot of travel, I think, is fueling into that. And of course, like I said yesterday, one of the other things to see with that is, I think we'd have I don't think we would be as low as we were last summer. It would be nice to see gas for 99 cents a gallon again. That would be fantastic. But I do think that if we still had the Keystone open, we'd just be 20 cents lower because there's still demand. People are traveling. People didn't travel last year. Well, some of them did because they made fun of the fact that they made light of it and said, "Oh yeah, I'm so afraid and you can't go out and I have to stay home for work and you're going to kill grandma. But I'm going to go paddleboarding in Florida. As long as we have all this time where we're working from home." Oh my God. But the travel bug was put away for the most part last year. Plus, the open the spigot war that we had going on yesterday. I don't think we'd be back to that point, but I definitely think it'd probably be a good 20 cents lower. But that's what we see coming back up out of that. All right, from Investors Business Daily. Dow Jones futures rise, S&P 500 eyes high as market rally gains steam. Snap, Tesla, Eli Lilly, Accenture moving, from Ed Carson. Dow futures rose modestly Thursday morning along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures, with the S&P 500 eyeing a record high. Snap stock and Tesla continue to climb after big moves Wednesday, while Eli Lilly said it will seek FDA approval for its Alzheimer's drug this year. Accenture eyed a breakout on earnings. A bipartisan group of senators said Wednesday night they've reached the outlines on an infrastructure spending deal with the White House. An agreement could come today. We'll be watching for that, and we'll probably talk about that tomorrow. The stock market rally had a quietly bullish Wednesday, with the NASDAQ holding at record highs, while leaders in growth stocks had solid sessions. Snapchat parent Snap ran higher, breaking past resistance into a buy zone. Tesla jumped Wednesday, flashing a couple early buy signals. Both Snap and Tesla stock continued rising in Thursday's pre-market. Accenture reported better than expected earnings before the open, with revenue up 20.5%, the best gain in years. The global tech and consulting firm also raised full-year guidance. ACN stock rose 4% before the open, suggesting a move above a 294.60 flat base buy point. Accenture has been finding support at its 50-day line. Eli Lilly said Thursday morning it's received FDA's breakthrough therapy designation for its Alzheimer's disease drug donanemab. It now plans to seek accelerated approval later this year. The FDA, I almost said FBI. Yeah, the FBI is controlling Alzheimer's. The FDA this month approved a Biogen Alzheimer's drug despite serious objections from staff and advisory panels. Lilly stock jumped 8% in pre-market trade, signaling a move back above a buy point. Shares soared in early June on the Biogen news, then pulled back somewhat. Biogen stock fell on Thursday. Meanwhile, FedEx earnings are on tap on Thursday. FedEx could potentially offer a buying opportunity if it rallies on earnings, so could rival UPS, which may have a slightly better looking chart. Expeditors International, an air freight logistics firm, is near a buy point. FedEx earnings and commentary could also be important for Amazon, a former major customer and a growing rival to FedEx. Amazon stock is closing in on a buy point. Snap stock is on the IBD leaderboard, and Swing Trader is also on the IBD 50. FedEx could rally. That's actually a possibility. And UPS as well. One of the things I've noticed working at Redacted is it's in the automotive industry, and one of the things that goes along with that right now is the fact that there aren't parts to be had. There aren't trucks to be had. There aren't parts to be had. But in order to keep, especially a commercial vehicle on the road, I mean, you need that on the road right now. You can't sit and wait for parts to get there. You need to hold that thing together with bubble gum, because if that truck's not moving, it's not making money. It's not like your passenger car where, I mean, yes, it's still depreciating, but for the most part, if you take public transit and your car sits in the driveway, you're going to be about in the same place, maybe a little bit better off because you're not putting the mileage on there. When you buy something to specifically make money with, if it's not moving, you're not making money. So, and I've seen people go out to try to expedite as hard as they can. Air freight, next day air, expedited shipping, as fast as you can. Let's throw freight on there. And that's going to reflect in the UPS, because that's going to allow them, that's going to have them obviously get some more staff, but because they need to make the journeys more and more. But yeah, that's the more freight that they can charge, because they've got to get this stuff moving. So yeah, absolutely. Just from that one industry alone, I could see a bump in FedEx and UPS. So we'll see what happens with that. Quickly on the infrastructure deal, Mitt Romney and Manchin said Wednesday that they and 8 other senators have reached the framework of an infrastructure deal. White House, the spending is $1.2 trillion, or over 8 years, or $579 billion in new spending. Romney and Manchin said the new spending is fully paid for, but didn't provide the details. The White House said and staff made progress towards an outline of the deal, with the president inviting the bipartisan group of senators for an in-person meeting on Thursday. On your futures, Dow futures rose 0.6% versus fair value, S&P 500 futures advanced 0.5%, and NASDAQ 100 futures climbed 0.6%. So the rough day that we saw yesterday, looks like that's going to be erased today. That's going to come back, so we'll see what happens with that. We'll pay attention to it as well. The tentative infrastructure deal could be lifting Dow futures. Futures also suggest that the S&P 500 will open at a record high. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, the Labor Department will release the weekly jobless claims, while the Commerce Department issues its May Durable Goods Report, which means that just probably happened a little bit ago. And remember that overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Excuse me. All right, I've got one from MarketWatch here, which I archived because I'm out of free articles there. But let's have a look at that, and then we will look at what happened in Florida. Dow futures up 170 points as S&P 500 aims for a record, from William Watts. U.S. stock futures rose Thursday as investors awaited data on weekly jobless benefit claims, orders for long-lasting goods, and a revised estimate of first-quarter gross domestic product, putting the S&P 500 index on track to test record territory a day after the NASDAQ composite closed at an all-time high. Signs of progress by a bipartisan group of lawmakers on an infrastructure spending proposal were also in focus, and that is probably what's going to lift the Dow most in and of itself, because all your infrastructure, as long as it's actually infrastructure, not childcare is infrastructure, education is infrastructure. As long as it's not that weighs heavily onto the industrials. That is going to go right into them. Members of the bipartisan group of U.S. lawmakers are holding talks on a roughly $1 trillion infrastructure proposal, said they had agreed to a framework for a package with plans to meet with President Biden on Thursday to finalize the deal, which could ultimately mean further fiscal stimulus for the economy. Or money printer go burr, one of the two. Stocks were buoyed earlier this week as the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, emphasized on Tuesday that the central bank is still expected to see inflation pressures to prove transitory. Analysts said some steam came out of the market on Wednesday's session after the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic said he pulled forward my projection for our first move to late 2022, following a similar comment on interest rates last week from St. Louis Reserve President James Bullard. Data on the first-time applications for unemployment benefits in the week ended June 19th is due at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Economists expected the number of initial claims to fall to 380,000 from 412,000 in the previous week. At the same time, May durable goods orders are expected to show a 2.6% rise after a fall of 1.3% in April. Investors will also get a look at the advanced report on May trade in goods and a revised reading on the first quarter gross domestic product. Economists look for a GDP growth to be left unchanged at an annualized rate of 6.4%. A softer than expected GDP figure could dampen the investor mood, as investors know the Fed can't do much about a slower before getting inflation under control, said Ipek Oskardeskaya, a senior analyst at Swissquote, in a note. Boy, I sure wish I knew what the hell was going on with Spectrum, because, man, this is getting old. All right, but that's what we see coming back up out of the finance. It looks like, yeah, basically we need to know what's going to happen with the inflation, with the infrastructure plan, and where that goes and where the money gets allocated. And if they're actually going to build infrastructure, or if it's going to be like, I don't know, the Green New Deal, where FDR says, hey, you go dig a hole. Hey, you go fill that hole back in. Just to pump some money back through the people. But we'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens. We'll know a lot more tomorrow, that's for sure. All right, breaking news this morning. One dead, massive search and rescue effort after partial collapse of Surfside condo building, from NBC6. At least one person was killed, and a massive search and rescue effort was underway following the partial collapse of a 12-story condo in Surfside early Thursday. Miami-Dade fire rescue officials said more than 80 units responded to the beachfront condo near 88th Street and Collins Avenue, just north of Miami Beach, around 2 a.m. The collapse sent a cloud of debris through the neighborhood, coating up cars up to 2 blocks away with a light layer of dust. Footage from the scene showed a large section of the sea view side of the building collapsed into a pile of rubble. Surfside Mayor Charles Burkett confirmed at least one person was killed in the collapse. It was unknown exactly how many people were injured inside the building at the time of the collapse, but Burkett said at least 10 people were treated at the scene. Officials at the nearby Adventura Hospital said they received 3 patients from the scene. 2 were in critical condition. The building has literally pancaked. It has gone down, and I mean, there's just feet between stories where there were 10 feet, Burkett said. This is a heartbreaking because it doesn't mean to me that we're going to be successful as we would want to be to find people alive. A witness told NBC6 that he saw the entire rear of the building collapse. I just can't put into words. It looks like a bomb hit. It looks like something in one of those third world countries that just literally collapsed like a pancake straight down, and there's just an incredible pile of rubble, he said. Earlier Thursday, firefighters were seen pulling a boy from the rubble and putting him onto the stretcher. The boy's condition was not immediately clear. Firefighters were also seen using a ladder truck to rescue people who were still, in sections of the building that were still standing. Officials said search dogs were helping to look for survivors. Let's see what NBC6 is saying here quick. Let's just listen into them.
And this is just based on an engineer with a lot of experience in this area looking at this video, and what we've heard from eyewitnesses sort of aligning with that. But, you know, it's hard to say at this point what actually caused this. That's something that will be investigated for some time by a lot of people. You can be sure of that. Over here at the Surfside, and one of the people obviously most concerned about that, the mayor of Surfside, who spoke to that a little earlier.
It's not really an older building. It was an 80s building. So again, I did Art Deco renovations in South Beach years ago. That's how I started. Those are old buildings. Those are from the 20s. This is from the 80s. There's no reason for this building to go down like that unless someone literally pulls out the supports from underneath, or they get washed out, or there's a sinkhole or something like that, because it just went down.
And that is consistent with what that engineer we spoke to was saying, that he doesn't think the load from anything put on the roof would cause 12 stories, a third, maybe more, of that building to just collapse in a heap of rubble like that. Now, comparing it to Art Deco district, you know, is a little off too, because those buildings in the Art Deco district might be 3 stories or 4 stories. Sure, they're very old, but they're not 12 stories.
All right, we can't go too much for this because I'm sure NBC is sitting there waiting with the ding button to say, hey, this channel rebroadcast us? Fuck that guy. But did give me a chance to blow my nose a little bit. Goddamn allergies, I swear. It's not even that bad until I start talking. But yeah, that's one of the things that we're seeing coming back up out of this. This is a horrible way to go, too. I mean, I don't know if there was a bomb that went off in that. We heard the engineer say that. This wasn't like just a thing. This was like somebody actually went back and, you know, pulled the supports out from underneath. It's, you know, like if you build a Lego structure and then pull the supports on one side, it just goes down. That doesn't seem to be what this is. Like, I don't know. I hope they find some people. I really do. I hope some people survive. But this is bad. All right, let's grab another one on this one here from. This is another local affiliate. Local10.com. There it is. Watch continuing coverage. Live, at least 1 dead, numerous others trapped following partial building collapse in Surfside. Miami-Dade fire rescue officials confirmed at least 1 person has been killed and numerous others are trapped after a condominium building partially collapsed early Thursday morning. The incident occurred at the Champlain Towers South building near 88th Street and Collins Avenue in Surfside. Santos Mejia told Local 10 news reporter Madeline Wright that his wife, Janet Rodriguez, was staying at the condominium building with a 95-year-old woman whom she's caring for when the collapse occurred around 1:20 a.m. Well, I hope she got out. He said she immediately called him after the collapse and told him she heard the earthquake, but they soon learned the building had partially collapsed on the back of the ocean side. The building's pool and parking garage were on the side of the building that collapsed. Maya said his wife and the elderly woman are both okay, but they could have fallen off the side of the building had they been closer to the balcony. The whole building shook like an earthquake. I opened the sliding glass, I saw a plume of dust, and then I heard the door, open the door rather, and I saw the building had pancaked in the back. A woman who lives on the 9th floor of the building said. Local 10 News was at the scene just before 5:30 a.m. as one person was being rescued from their balcony. More than 80 MDFR units, including technical rescue teams, are at the scene with assistance from municipal fire departments, including some from Broward County. There are more than 100 units that responded in all. A photo taken from the scene shows a boy being pulled from the rubble by a firefighter. Well, good. I hope he winds up being okay. I hope everybody winds up being okay. I know that's optimistic, especially when you have a collapse like this. And like the engineer said, there are feet between some of these floors where there used to be 10 feet. So, I mean, maybe there'll be a miracle, but I understand the fact that there's probably going to be a couple casualties that come with this at least. So we'll see what happens with this. And this is another one, just like I said with the stock market news. This is another one we are going to see. We're going to have plenty more information on this tomorrow, I promise. So we will see what happened. All right, let's grab one from the Associated Press. Getting into the news that I wanted to start with today. Apparently we have to refresh the Associated Press. Why am I having so much trouble with the Associated Press today? There it goes. Antivirus pioneer John McAfee found dead in Spanish prison. From Aritz Parra, Renita Brito, and Barry Hatton. John McAfee, creator of the McAfee antivirus software, was found dead in his jail cell near Barcelona in an apparent suicide Wednesday, hours after a Spanish court approved his extradition to the U.S. to face tax charges punishable by decades in prison, authorities said. The eccentric cryptocurrency promoter and tax opponent, whose history of legal trouble spanned from Tennessee to Central America to the Caribbean, was discovered at the Brians II Penitentiary in northeastern Spain. Security personnel tried to revive him, but the jail's medical team finally certified his death, a statement from the regional Catalan government said. A judicial delegation has arrived to investigate the cause of death, it said, adding that everything points to death by suicide. The statement didn't identify McAfee by name, but said the man was dead at 75-year-old, U.S. citizen awaiting extradition to its country. A Catalan government official familiar with the case, who was not authorized to be named in media reports, confirmed to the Associated Press that it was McAfee. Spain's national court on Monday ruled in favor of extraditing McAfee, 75, who had argued in a hearing earlier this month that the charges against him by persecutors in Tennessee were politically motivated and that he would spend the rest of his life in prison if he returned to the U.S. over tax evasion. The court's ruling was made public on Wednesday and was open for appeal with any final extradition order also needing to get approval from the Spanish cabinet. McAfee was arrested last October at Barcelona's international airport and had been in jail since then, awaiting the outcome of an extradition proceeding. The arrest followed charges the same month in Tennessee for evading taxes after failing to report income from promoting cryptocurrencies while he did consulting work and made speaking engagements and sold the rights to his life story for a documentary. The criminal charges carried a prison sentence of up to 30 years. Nishay Sanan, the Chicago-based attorney defending him on those cases, said by phone that McAfee will always be remembered as a fighter. Well, throw those Fs up, guys. Fs in the chat for John McAfee. I want to see all the Fs. Flood my screen with Fs. He tried to love his country, but the U.S. government made his existence impossible, Sanan said. They tried to erase him, but they failed. The lawyer said that Spanish authorities had not given his legal team a cause of death, and he wants to know if there were video cameras in McAfee's cell or in the prison. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Memphis declined to comment. Tennessee persecutors had argued that McAfee owed the U.S. government $4,214,105 in taxes before fines and interest for undeclared income in the 5 fiscal years from 2014 to 2018, according to a Spanish court document as seen by the Associated Press. But in this week's ruling, the national court judge agreed to extradite him only to face charges from 2016 to 2018. Born in England's Gloucestershire in 1945 as John David McAfee, he started McAfee Associates in 1987 and led an eccentric life after selling his stake in the antivirus software company named after him in the early 90s. McAfee twice made long-shot runs for the U.S. presidency and was a participant in the Libertarian Party presidential debates in 2016. He dabbled in yoga, ultralight aircraft, and produced herbal medications. In 2012, he was wanted for questioning in connection with the death of Gregory Fall, who was shot to death in early November 2012 on the Belize island where the man lived. McAfee told AP at the time that he was being persecuted by the Belizean government. Belizean police denied that, saying that they were simply investigating a crime about which McAfee may have had information. Then Prime Minister Dean Barrow expressed doubts that McAfee's mental state, saying, "I don't want to be unkind to the gentleman, but I believe he's extremely paranoid, even bonkers." A Florida court ordered McAfee in 2019 to pay $25 million to Fall's estate in a wrongful death claim. So a lot of stuff going on here, a lot of stuff to pay attention to with this, but he was born in Gloucestershire. Was he born to U.S. parents? Because I don't know how he could run for president if he wasn't a born U.S. citizen. That I didn't know that about him. But also, there's a lot of weird stuff that's going on with this too. And, from what I understand, and I was not paying as much attention to McAfee as some of my LP friends were. I mean, they all loved the guy. For a good reason. I mean, he was a good guy. He wasn't on my radar. I knew who he was. I knew that he was eccentric. I know that Jake tried to organize an appearance on Ed's World with him for me, but that wound up falling through. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. I know that he came out and said that if it ever was shown that he killed himself, he didn't kill himself, and he had no intention to kill himself. So there's a lot of stuff about this that doesn't add up. I don't know why somebody would want to have him offed, but I don't know enough about him to say why somebody would want to have him offed. I don't know if he knew, like if he had a list of people that went to Epstein Island. I don't know any of this stuff, because I didn't see near as much of this as some of my friends did. So anybody who wants to fill me in a little bit on the chat, let me know. I'll definitely read it, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it tomorrow again, because I'm sure that this story is going to be up there as well, but we'll see what happens. I've got another one from the New York Post. Antivirus software pioneer John McAfee dead after hanging himself in jail. From Jorge Fitzgibbon and Ben Feuerherd. Antivirus software tycoon John McAfee apparently hanged himself in a Spanish jail cell on Wednesday, just hours after a court ruled he would be extradited to face federal charges in the U.S. Authorities said a preliminary investigation determined there were no signs of foul play, the Spanish newspaper El País reported. The 75-year-old eccentric tech entrepreneur was arrested in October and was awaiting extradition to the Barcelona jail when he was found dead by hanging, police sources told El País. The newspaper reported McAfee was pulled from his cell in Barcelona, and police are investigating the circumstances around his death. Everything points to suicide, the newspaper reported, citing Justice Department officials in the country. A second Spanish newspaper, El Mundo, also reported McAfee has died by an apparent suicide in the jail. Earlier on Wednesday, the Spanish High Court had agreed to extradite McAfee. Yeah, we've seen all this stuff here before. We saw this all in the Associated Press. But yeah, there's some of the last pictures of him. He was also charged in a separate indictment in a Manhattan federal court in March for a pump-and-dump scheme involving cryptocurrencies he was touting on social media. In that case, McAfee, an accomplice, and allegedly built Bitcoin investors out of some $13 million in 2 schemes, including one where they brought up large quantities of altcoin and then inflated the price by publicizing it on Twitter. So, a lot of stuff happening there as well. I know that at the time, when Jake tried to set up the interview for him, he was living on a ship in the Atlantic Ocean so that he couldn't be extradited. So, I don't know if he just got picked up on a fuel stop or what the hell the deal was with that. How he got picked up. But regardless, he got picked up and now he's dead. So, we'll see what happens with that. Alright, from Newsweek. John McAfee tweet from 2020 Services saying if he dies in jail, it's not suicide. From Daniel Villarreal. Shortly after reports that John McAfee, the British-American antivirus computer programmer, died by a likely suicide while in a Spanish jail, Twitter users have unearthed McAfee's 2020 tweet saying, "Know that if I hang myself a la Epstein, it will be no fault of mine." The full tweet says, "I am content in here, I have friends, the food is good, all is well. Know that if I hang myself a la Epstein, it will be no fault of mine." Epstein didn't kill himself. McAfee didn't kill himself, as far as I can tell anyway. Thank you for the follow, by the way, EOR Explores. I see that over here. The Spanish High Court had authorized McAfee's extradition to the U.S. to face tax evasion charges, Reuters reported. The story is breaking and will be updated as more information becomes available. So, yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the tweet. That's the article. They found out that McAfee put out a statement that said he didn't kill himself. And he didn't, apparently. So we'll see what happens with that. I gotta wonder what it was that somebody would have to have him offed. And again, I don't know enough about him to speculate, but it makes you wonder. All right. I got another one archived here from Insider. QAnon followers are already spreading Epstein-like conspiracy theories about John McAfee's reported suicide. From Rachel E. Greenspan and Stephen Asarch. Just minutes after the news broke that John McAfee reportedly died by suicide in a Spanish prison, QAnon conspiracy theorists basically suggested the antivirus software pioneer died by other means. Yeah, this is a get out ahead of the article to make the people sound crazy. Several top QAnon influencers on Telegram, some of whom have hundreds of thousands of followers on the far-right favorite messaging platform, shared posts on Wednesday afternoon including the word suicide in quotes. Word on the street, only time will tell if this report was true or not. The account with 61,000 subscribers shared on the app conspiracies alleging that McAfee had a dead man switch or a device that activates when its owner dies were also being shared online. Yeah, this is the MSM trying to get out ahead of the story. This already, and I'm only a couple paragraphs in, reads like a fucking panic switch. McAfee was in prison in Spain pending extradition on tax evasion charges before his death was reported on Wednesday. A 2019 tweet from the antivirus software mogul's verified Twitter account appears to be emboldening some of these claims. "If I suicide myself, I didn't," the tweet said. Getting subtle messages from U.S. officials saying, in effect, "We're coming for you, McAfee. We're going to kill yourself. I got a tattoo today just in case. If I suicide myself, I didn't. I was whacked. Check my right arm." And there's the tattoo. $ whacked. With no E. QAnon, a wide-ranging far-right conspiracy theory based on the false notion that former President Trump, human traffickers, blah, blah, pedophiles, blah, 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 eat children, blah, 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 satanic. Yeah, we've heard all this before, from the mainstream media, of course. Epstein didn't kill himself eventually became a major online meme. Hours after McAfee's death, a similar phrase became a popular hashtag on Twitter. Eddie Backeter, HMP, says, so a bloke who predicted he'd be suicided is found dead in his cell just another day on this fucked up planet. Hashtag McAfee didn't kill himself. I can't even read the Cyrillic on that. I have a significant disagreement with McAfee, but this was clearly an unlawful assassination by the government, not a suicide. Hashtag McAfee didn't kill himself. Online discourse over the McAfee Associates software company founder also focused on an Instagram post from McAfee's verified account on Wednesday afternoon, hours after his death was reported by Reuters, that showed the letter Q. That's it. That's the tweet. Although I suppose that would be the Instagram, not the tweet. It was not immediately clear who had control of McAfee's Instagram account. Instagram told Insider it was looking into the situation. Meaning, we're going to scrub this because we can't have people looking too closely into this. It was not, McAfee was an American software engineer who founded the antivirus company McAfee Associates and ran it until he resigned in 1994. A lot of this we've already looked at before. I don't think he did it. Just because he left the trail of breadcrumbs enough for people to say that, yeah. Now, there is, I do want to point one thing out. Now, once again, I don't know McAfee. I don't know what he's all about. I know a lot of people close to me have met the man, including my co-host, Elaine. A lot of you guys have met the man. I have not. But it does occur to me as well that he may have left this trail of breadcrumbs because he has a treasure trove somewhere to tell people that he didn't kill himself, so they went to go into major conspiracy theories to go and find out what actually happened to him. And then he actually did kill himself, so that there's possibly something bigger out there that he meant for people to find, a bigger Easter egg out there. That is also entirely possible at this point. But a lot of stuff to see. We will see what happens with that, and I'm sure that we're going to be talking about this for quite a while as more and more information comes out. But I'm curious to see where this goes and what level this goes. And the biggest curiosity to me is not whether or not he killed himself. The biggest curiosity to me is, especially if you're trying to get somebody to pay restitution on tax evasion for millions of dollars, why somebody would have him killed. I don't understand that. I have a lot of questions about that. That's one of the big ones for me. Why, oh why, would somebody have the guy offed? But we will see what happens there. Now, surprisingly, we are now, 42 minutes into the episode, and we're first talking about this, which by all rights should be a top of the episode thing. Let's listen to our current sitting president. In any other news day, this would be the top story, but we have to cover something breaking. And then go and cover John McAfee. Any other day of the year, this would be the number one story. Hell, when Swalwell said the same thing. This was the number one, number two, number three, and number four stories that day. But this had to get relegated to the back three quarters of the show. Let's have a listen to what he has to say.
The Second Amendment, from the day it was passed, limited the type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. You couldn't buy a cannon. Those who say the blood of patriots, and all the stuff about how we're going to have to move against the government. Well, the tree of liberty is not water with the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there never been, if you want to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. The point is that there's always been the ability to rationally limit the type of weapon that can be owned and who can own it. The Second Amendment, from the day it was passed, limited the type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. You couldn't buy a cannon. Those who say the blood of patriots, and all the stuff about how we're going to have to move against the government. Well, the tree of liberty is not water with the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there never been, if you want to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. The point is that there's always been the ability to rationally limit the type of weapon that can be owned and who can own it. The Second Amendment, from the day it was passed, limited the type of people who could own a gun.
So there's a lot of stuff to go over on that one. That is, there's a lot of information there, and a lot of that's, some of it's true. Some of it's absolutely true. But some of it's not. And I mean, Spartan was right there, right in the chat, and says, many of the founding fathers said the people should own a cannon. Yeah, that's true. That's definitely one to go with that. But here's what we need to discuss, because there's a lot of it to go over. There's a lot wrong with this. First and foremost, there are donation links in the chat and in the description if you're watching over on YouTube. Because, you know, since if I want to stand up to the federal government, I need an F-15, so I need you guys to help me buy an F-15. What does that cost? What does an F-15 cost? Let's have a look. The F-15EX costs $87.7 million per aircraft and can fly for 20,000 hours at a cost of $29,000 per hour. So $29,000 per hour times 20,000 hours is $87.7 million. For the aircraft, comes out to a pretty serious $667.7 million. In order to match that operational lifespan, it would take 3 F-35As. So there we go. I need you to come up with $87.7 million for me, and then we'll worry about the fuel later. But, I mean, if that's what we need to do, then the donation links are all right there. You can do a Subscribe Star. You can do... I don't have the e-wallet up yet, but you can do a Subscribe Star. You can do Buy Me a Coffee. You can do PayPal. It's all there. Come on. You know you want me to have an F-15. Anyway, yeah, and that's... I can't believe he said that. Well, yeah, I can, actually. I actually can believe he said that. And the blood of the Patriots bullshit, too, on top of this. Where to begin, where to begin, where to begin. This is the same shit that Swalwell said. Oh, if you think you're gonna stand up to the government, I got news to you. The government's got nukes. Too many of them, but they work. Yeah, you're gonna nuke your own infrastructure, you fucking twidget? Let me grab this one here for you guys. This is one that I dropped into my Discord, which I can get the link off of this. And this is the funny part of what we think about the AR-15 as well. This came to me from Austin Peterson. Oops, put it in the wrong window. So there it is right there. Austin Peterson put this on Instagram, and I appropriated the memes of production off of this, but this is Schrodinger's gun. It is simultaneously useless against the military and also a weapon of war that no civilian should own. But, I mean, look at some of the stuff that we've seen coming back out of here. And a lot of people have pointed out the fact that, you know, when I put this article up in the Discord, because I wanted to mark it for later, when I put this video up there, the chill anarchist over there said, laughs in Viet Cong, which Viet Cong, Afghanistan, Korea. We had nukes for all of those engagements, but we didn't use them. We had the fighter jets, we had tanks, we had all of the stuff, and all those governments have held us to a stalemate at that point. And furthermore, now, as for me, I'm sure that at some point the government's going to come for me. And I'm going to shoot back when they do. I am not under any delusion that if the government comes for me personally, and I shoot back personally, that I am going to win personally. Unless I've got a strong force of my neighborhood behind me as well. But I'm under no delusion that one man versus the U.S. government is going to walk away. But also keep in mind why we started to draw back out of Vietnam. Because once you start stacking up bodies, people start to lose interest in your cause really quick. Now, as far as going overseas, when we're starting to stack up bodies in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, at some points, places like that, Syria, Lebanon. Once we're stacking bodies over there, it's just easy to come out and say, oh, well, those are the enemy. We don't have to worry about those. Those are people. Those are our enemy. But they do get seen through a lens of, these are just NPCs in the video game that is life. So we can do whatever we want with those. But, once you start stacking human bodies, your friends, your neighbors, especially in this interconnected country that we have, where you can have friends in all parts of the country, there are going to be a lot of people that lose a lot of interest in your cause once your neighbors start going away. And they can only demonize people for so long. And I have spent an exorbitant amount of time on a 30-second video. So we got to move on from this. Let's grab the chat back up here. Let's grab from Fox News. Biden touts new crime prevention strategy focused on gun control. From Morgan Phillips. President Biden, in remarks on Wednesday, said his crime prevention strategy would focus on strengthening background checks, banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and boosting community policy. Biden met with state and local leaders and law enforcement officials ahead of his remarks to talk crime prevention strategy amid a surge in violence in cities across the U.S. Gee, I wonder why that is. Both Biden and AG Merrick Garland, who spoke before him, pointed to a historic rise in crime in the summertime and said that the rise may be more pronounced as the nation comes out of the commie-fucking-coof pandemic. The White House has insisted on curbing gun violence is key to tamping down a staggering surge of crime in the country. Talk to most responsible gun owners, and they'll tell you there's no possible justification for having 100 rounds in a magazine, Biden said. I could think of one. Pick me, I could think of one. Because I can. Biden also took aim at an argument used by the Second Amendment advocates that the right to self-defense is needed to protect against the potential government tyranny. Those who say that the blood of patriots, the thing, and all the stuff about how we're going to have to move against the government, Biden said. If you think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. Your terms are acceptable, Mr. President. We're not changing the Constitution. We're enforcing it. No, you're not. The Constitution, and this is coming from somebody who's read the entire Constitution. The Constitution lays out a lot of framework for how the government is supposed to work, the way that they interact with each other, various ways that our government is supposed to function in our lives. What it's doing now is entirely bastardized, and we have way too much federal control of our lives. But the framework of the Constitution is one single commandment to the government. It's not to the people, it's to the government. There is one single commandment to the government. Thou shalt not. That's it. That's the commandment. Biden touted zero tolerance for gun dealers who willfully violate the law and claimed that 90% of illegal guns found at crime scenes were traced back to 5% of gun dealers. The zero tolerance policy targets federally licensed firearms dealers who willfully transfer a weapon to someone prohibited from owning one or ignoring a tracing request from the Bureau of ATF. The ATF would seek to revoke the dealer's license after the first offense, a senior White House official said. Okay. But that's not where these people are. So there are, and I'm going to come back and say this, there are probably a few bad eggs out there, gun dealers who say, well, my buddy Clyde over here, he done beat up his wife, but she had it coming. So I'm still going to sell my buddy Clyde a gun. Because it's his American patriot duty to have a gun. There are those out there. But the illegal guns that are getting into Chicago and Los Angeles and Boston and Washington, D.C., and other major urban centers around the country. Detroit is another one. Portland. The illegal guns that are getting there, they're not coming from an FFL. Directly, at least. They're coming indirectly. Usually it's from some sort of either theft or illegal weapons transportation. These people are going to get the guns no matter what you do. Because there are people out there in the rest of the world that look at this and say, well, I just want to cause the chaos, so let's arm everybody back up. You can make every gun law in the world that you want, and it's still not going to solve the problem. If you willfully sell a gun to someone who is prohibited from possessing it, if you willfully fail to run a background check, if you willfully falsify a record, my message to you is this: we will find you and we will seek your license to sell guns, Biden said. Okay, cool. And I'll take this to one point that Biden said. You know, from the beginning of the government, the founding fathers said that there were certain people who shouldn't be able to buy guns. Which is, okay, that's true. But see, they were deemed criminally insane and they either went to an asylum or they were under the care of somebody else at the time. And the federal government didn't enforce it either. It was mostly done on the state levels. But yes, of course there were the criminally insane that were not allowed to take up arms. Because they'd go off and do something stupid like shoot a representative of the political enemy, a person who supports the political enemy, after dragging him off the back of a pickup truck in Portland. They would do shit like that. Yes, of course, the criminally insane weren't allowed to do so. But, I mean, how do you do that back in the 1700s, except for having it done at a locality? And the community does that, and then you take the guy off and take him to the asylum. Because he also can't function in the rest of society. Or he's in prison. That's the other thing. The NRA said that Biden initiative was an attempt to distract from the true cause of a rise in crime. This is a political red herring aimed at hiding the real and abysmal failures of the Biden admin. NRA spokeswoman Amy Hunter told Fox News crime rates are high because of efforts to defund the police and a failure to prosecute career criminals. The simple fact is strict enforcement of existing laws, including gun laws, coupled with support of law enforcement and persecutors to do their jobs would result in a dramatic decrease in crime, but the president would rather play politics than make Americans safer. Biden also boasted of historic funding for crime prevention in the $350 billion for state and local governments from the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package that can be used by cities to hire law enforcement officers, pay overtime, persecute gun traffickers, and invest in technology to make law enforcement more efficient. Officials said the Biden admin hoped cities would choose to use the money for alternatives to policing too and invest in community policing models. The administration has also taken aim at ghost guns. Oh, this is going to be good. And modified firearms, which are homemade firearms without serial numbers, that can be used to trace them, making it difficult for law enforcement to determine where, by whom, or when they were manufactured and to whom they were sold. The Justice Department's ATF last month sought to update the legal definition of firearm in an effort to crack down on ghost guns. Oh, goodness. Goodness. I mean, you knew this was coming. It's not like this was a big secret that they were going to do this, but yeah, that's what we're seeing here. And yeah, at this point, yes, I need an F15. So go ahead, hit those donate links, throw a little bit of cash this way, help me out, because I need that F15 to go stand up to the government. All right, let's grab one here from NPR for you guys here. It's an outrage. Biden outlines new steps to curb surging gun violence. This is from Alana Wise. And make sure, of course, because we are doing this on NPR, you donate to NPR because they need your money. They need to spread communist propaganda around the country, and they need your money. That's why the big red donate button is on top. And if we get halfway through this article, they'll prompt us to donate again, because they need our money, comrade. It's not your money. It is the collective's money, and it needs to go to NPR. Remember, folks, NPR, National Progressive Radio, spreading communist ideals throughout the country since the beginning of time. Let's see what they have to say. With cities across the country witnessing spikes of violent crime, the White House on Wednesday announced a new plan to tackle gun violence, building on President Biden's vow to make it his priority to curb America's gun violence epidemic. Citing the uptick in violence since the commie fucking coup forced millions of Americans out of work and into their homes for extended periods, Biden on Wednesday announced a 5-point proposal that includes cracking down on gun sellers who violate federal laws with a new zero-tolerance policy, giving additional support to local law enforcement to help with summer crime increases. That's not going to fly well with the progressives. Investing in community violence intervention programs, expanding summer employment and services, particularly for teens and young adults. Meanwhile, you have millions of people unemployed that need that job first to feed their families, and helping formerly incarcerated individuals successfully re-enter their communities. Biden, that last one I actually do agree with, by the way. Because, if you don't help these people get back into their communities, they get desperate, they can't get a job, they need to feed themselves, and they go back and commit another crime. So, if you're going to have your 1994 crime bill, you need to have a way for people to get back into society after they served out the extended prison sentence that your tough on crime 1994 crime bill put them in prison for. Biden, who delivered the remarks after the White House roundtable with local officials, and his attorney general said violent crime has spiked through the pandemic and mentioned that violent crime typically jumps in the summer months. The president also mentioned aspects of gun control that would need to go through Congress, like universal background checks, not going to happen, and banning high-capacity magazines. He said his plan will supercharge what works while the White House continues to push Congress. He also called on Congress to confirm his ATF director. No. Speaking to whom he described as rogue gun dealers, Biden said, My message to you is this, man. We will find you, and we will seek your license to sell guns, man. Come on. And Corn Pop is a bad dude. And we'll make sure that you can't sell death and mayhem in our streets. Okay. Introduce me to the person who has an actual federal firearms license that's doing that. Selling death and mayhem to the streets. Because I think you're a fucking liar. It's an outrage, man, and we'll end it. A senior admin official told reporters Tuesday night that the Treasury Department will also inform the states that they can use funds allotted by the American Rescue Plan to aid in reducing gun violence. Monies awarded by the COVID-19 relief law can be used to hire additional police officers and pay overtime. Oh, progressives, you got sold a bill of goods and you got lied to. You were supposed to get less police. That's what you were promised when you elected 1994 crime bill and former California persecutor. As well as to assist in funding employment opportunities for youth and at-risk adults. A key part of the new White House package involves providing increased funding for local law enforcement officers to better combat crime surges, but the topic of policing and how officers should interact with communities in which they work has often been a sticking point between Democratic moderates and progressives. Yeah. Because if you put more cops on the force and turn them out on the people who are committing the crimes, unfortunately, we're going to get some more of these riots that we saw over the summer. Biden has faced criticisms from gun safety advocates who say that the White House has not made gun reform enough of a priority, despite Biden's promises to work to curb violent crime. In the early months of the Biden presidency, the nation saw a number of mass shootings that prompted new calls for gun reform that were totally organic and grassroots too, by the way. There was no ulterior agenda. We get a president in who's eager for gun control, and mysteriously, weirdly, we start to see a surge in mass shootings. Weird! That's so crazy! Elaine just sent me a Snapchat while she's on here. I'm going to send her a Twitter message. No, I'm not. But she should be watching. She should be hanging out with us, you guys. Including the March 16th Atlanta spa shootings and the March 22nd grocery store shooting in Boulder, Colorado. The second of which we are supposed to have forgotten because it doesn't fit the narrative. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Let's grab a little bit more here. This is coming back down on the local side of things. Miami Valley leaders clash over Biden's gun control proposal. This is from 2 News out of Dayton, Florida. From Carolyn Morse. Opinions are predictably mixed in the Miami Valley as pro-Second Amendment advocates and gun control supporters clash over the president's new gun control proposals. Buckeye Firearms Association says Biden's proposed gun control plan may be invalid due to the U.S. Constitution. They're talking about banning firearms, which are just everyday rifles. That's unconstitutional, said Dean Rick, executive director of the Buckeye Firearms Association. What they're talking about, banning magazines because they have too many rounds. That's unconstitutional. If they want to just enforce current laws, that's perfectly constitutional and what they should be doing. Well, no, a lot of the current laws really aren't fully constitutional either, but we just accept them because it's been that way forever. Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley thinks otherwise. She says Biden has been very supportive during the Mayor's Challenge conference, listening to gun control. Is this in Florida or is this in Ohio? Because they're talking about stuff that's in Ohio. Is Miami Valley in Ohio and I'm just dumb? Maybe. Thank you for the follow, by the way, Stormy Daniels, as well. I just caught that out of the corner of my eye. Let's go check in, see if nobody throwing any lemons at me. I think any time where we can see the rescue plan having more flexibility to use funds to provide services and the Department of Justice really stepping up are 2 really important points to get illegal guns off the street, said Whaley. The Buckeye Firearms Association claims the president's plan will harm law-abiding gun owners instead of focusing on criminal and gun violence. Rick says leaders at the city level must step up first before restrictive gun laws are enacted. However, Whaley believes local leadership isn't the problem, adding gun violence rates in her city have stayed fairly consistent. Whaley has long been calling for gun reform in the wake of the Dayton mass shooting. She says illegal guns are the issue and wants them off the streets, but Rick claims this proposal is just a distraction. It's just phony baloney politics, when they want to talk about these background checks that aren't happening, said Rick. It's not going to be an issue at all. It's just going to be another law they want to pass. We've seen whole cities burning down and city officials just shrugging and not doing anything about it. That's insane. Yeah, I remember the Dayton shooting. That was like a one-off incident where a guy who got pushed around, didn't he just fucking snap? I know we didn't see a lot of it for a long time. It went in and it disappeared. But yeah, they're talking about DeWine too. I think this is Ohio. But yeah, they're pushing back. They're fighting over gun control regulations as well. So I guess we'll see what happens with this. And, maybe if you guys throw enough donations at me, you'll get me that nice F15. Let's see. What did we say? That was $87.7 million. And I think we currently earned at this point $75. So we're almost there. $75 is almost $87.7 million, right? We'll get there. I have faith in you guys. You guys rock. All right, let's grab another one here from Politico, shifting gears and talking about the other idiot-in-chief. Kamala Harris is set to visit the border. From Daniel Lippman. This makes me laugh. This makes me laugh a lot. Vice President Kamala Harris is heading to the U.S.-Mexico border this week amid an unrelenting chorus of criticism from Republicans over her failure to visit there. Harris, who was tasked by President Biden to lead diplomatic efforts to stem the flow of migrants arriving at the southern border. I love how they shifted that too. I love how they went back to retcon history. And all the stupid little fucking progressives on Twitter jumped all over that shit too. That's a bullshit lie that the GOP came up with. Biden didn't put her in charge of the border. Oh, really? Axios said so. CNN said so. MSNBC said so. But no, it was, he put her on a task force to go to the Northern Triangle countries and figure out why people are leaving there. No, he put her in charge of the border, which I think Jill had something to do with that. I remember the Sticks video where we talked about that too. Where I think it was people in the administration pleased with her, tried to throw her under the bus for that. Oh, Spectrum. Oh, this is fun shit. Why does Spectrum keep doing this to me? At least it's not nuking my fucking processor like it used to. Will visit El Paso, Texas on Friday, according to sources familiar with the trip. She will be accompanied by Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Simone Sanders, the Vice President's senior advisor and chief spokesperson, confirmed the trip in a statement saying earlier this year, the President asked the Vice President to oversee our diplomatic efforts to address the root causes of migration from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. As part of this ongoing work, the Vice President traveled to Guatemala and Mexico earlier this month and will travel to El Paso on Friday. And what happened in Guatemala? Kamala, go home. Mind your own business. Trump won. Harris and her team have repeatedly pushed back against criticism that neither she nor the president have gone to visit the U.S.-Mexico border, arguing that she's more focused on tackling the destabilizing conditions that are causing thousands of migrants from Central America to head to the border seeking refuge. That was the central message during the first foreign trip, a 2-day visit to Mexico and Guatemala earlier this month. While there, Harris met with local officials and implored migrants not to make the journey across Mexico into the U.S. Do not come. Do not come. Interestingly, first, let's actually talk about what's happening here, because a couple things that are on the table right now with Harris going down here is, we talked about last week, the Donald is going to the border to go try to assess the situation in the border facility. He is going himself. And it looks like right now, because he's supposed to go over the weekend, so she's trying to get there tomorrow so she can beat him there. Because, yeah, she's going tomorrow. But I've got some other interesting points on this that I wanted to bring up for this. This one came from Congressman Greg Steube, which I can't confirm or verify this because there's no green check verified sources that are talking about this. But the rumor is that Florida law enforcement officers made it to the southern border before the VP Harris, so did President Trump. Which, yeah, I think he has done so in this term as well. I know he's going down there once again off of this. As far as the Florida law enforcement officers, as far as that goes, because a lot of people are trying to rake Greg Steube over the coals for the fact that he came out and said this. That was done on a volunteer basis, where they volunteered, they raised their hands and said, okay, we'll go if you need us to go. And Ron DeSantis, I guess, did the interstate commerce kind of stuff that he needed to do to make it so it was legal for them to go and enforce law on the border. So basically it was a loan. He came out and said, okay, well, we're doing great here in Florida, so I'm going to let these guys go and visit Texas and help out because they need to. Because a lot of people are coming and say, what southern border's in Florida? Isn't that the ocean? Owned! Isn't that the Gulf of Mexico? I owned you! Well, no, that's not actually the case. These people are volunteering, saying, hey, we'll go over and help out. Can you deputize us? Can you do something? Can we help? Can we help your situation? But that's what we see coming back up out of that. Another one here. This was the more interesting one to me. John Cornyn pointed out where Kamala is going. Now, we heard in the article from Politico, so this isn't just stuff that Cornyn's making up. This came from Politico that she's going to El Paso, which, for the most part, I think is pretty calm on the border thing. The big crisis that's going right now is down here in this region, just south of San Antonio. I know the Donna facility is down here, but it's for the most part down here in the Rio Grande Valley where we're having the big problems with it. Not up here in El Paso. Once again, she's going to a place where it's just all calm and ho-hum and humdrum. A 1,000 miles away from where the big ones are. So that's what we're seeing coming back up out of that. All right. And that's what we see from the border. Let's shift gears again. Let's talk about the Supreme Court. Starting with the Dissociated Press, which is dissociated right now. So let's refresh that quick and see what that does. I need to stop using the AP. Or am I calling it the DP now? I think that's a little bit more suggestive than one might think. Come on, you. There we go. All right, from the Dissociated Press, justices rule. Oh, go away, advertisement. Justices rule for student in cursing cheerleader case. From Mark Sherman. In the case of the cursing cheerleader, the Supreme Court notched a victory for the free speech rights of a student Wednesday, siding with a high school student whose vulgar social media post got her kicked off the junior varsity squad. The court voted 8-1 in favor of Brandy Levy, who was a 14-year-old freshman when she expressed her disappointment over not making the varsity cheerleading team with a string of curse words and a raised middle finger on Snapchat. Levi of Mahoney City, Pennsylvania, was not at school when she made her post, but she was suspended from cheerleading activities for a year anyway. In an opinion by Justice Stephen Breyer, the High Court ruled the suspension violated Levy's First Amendment freedom of speech rights. Justice Clarence Thomas dissented, noting that he would have upheld the suspension. The justices did not foreclose schools from disciplining students for what they say off campus, though they did not spell out when schools could act. An earlier federal appeals court ruling in this case would have barred public schools from punishing off-campus speech. Despite ruling in Levy's favor, Breyer wrote that we do not believe the special characteristics that give schools additional license to regulate student speech always disappear when a school regulates speech that takes place off-campus. The school's regulatory interests remain significant in some off-campus circumstances. The case drew extra interest at a time of remote learning because of the coronavirus pandemic and a rising awareness of the harmful effects of online bullying. The decision was a strong endorsement of students' right to speak freely, which the court first expressed more than a half-century ago, defending armbands worn by high school students in protest of the Vietnam War, said Abner Green, a constitutional law professor at Fordham University School of Law in Manhattan. That has nothing to do with this. That is a completely different situation than what we see going on here. Now, just reading this article here and the details, I have not read the decision. I know we had a lengthy discussion with Anna Valtis yesterday in the Discord, which if you're not in the Discord, go and join the Discord because I'm on there almost every single weekday to have voice chat with people because, I do it while I'm at work. While I'm doing some mindless putting away of stock, I throw the voice chat on. I'm not customer facing, so I can usually get by with it. And then I'll come back and we'll have discussions about stuff like this here. I actually probably would have been in the dissent on this myself. Now, hear me out. Hear me out on this one because it's a special case on this. Now, had Levy been punished in the core program, that would have completely changed what I said. Now, if she'd have been suspended from school, had to miss out on days of education, and that therefore would have affected her ability to get into certain colleges, certain things to do that, because she had that stain on her permanent record. That I would have had a problem with. As far as the extracurricular goes, because it appears that was the only punitive action that was taken, was that she was suspended from one team for 1 year. Still got to go to school, still got to enjoy her core curriculars, math, science, English, social studies, stuff like that. She still got to engage in all of that stuff. She just couldn't go and cheer. Now, the reason I approach it this way, specifically different from if she'd have been punished in the core curricular activities, is the fact that when you are, especially when you're a cheerleader, you are expected to represent the school. And you're almost, I don't know if you're actually expected. I really wish I could have had that interview with that cheerleading coach. I'm going to reach out to her again today and see if we can still get that happening for the Red Ned show. But I have a lot of questions about this. But as far as I understand for cheerleading, you are expected to be a representative of your school and represent it to its highest form. That's the point of cheerleading. Representing and raising pep for your school. So if you can come out so easily and badmouth your school, I could see that as a conflict of interest from the cheer team. And as long as, once again, you are not punished punitively on your core curriculars, like there's no punitive action against your core curricular activity, and you can still go and get the education, you are still being equally protected under the law, and that should still fly. And then it's only a year, too, so you can come back and say, okay, well, now I want to be peppy and I like my school again, let's try this again. That's the approach that I come to it from. And I might be wrong on this, but that's the approach that I came to it off. But that's neither here nor there at this point. The decision is made, and I do have some questions about it. They're talking about online bullying of it. I don't necessarily agree with that either. But I guess that's what we're going to see coming back out of this. Like I said, I could be very, very wrong about this. I very much could be. The only other thing that I could think of where I could say that this could be a damage that could be sued and appealed to the Supreme Court like this, is the fact that missing a year of cheer means that she could have missed out on certain scholarships. That's the only way that I could see that there could be an actual damage to this. So we'll see what happens with that. Well, I guess we already saw what happened with that. This one is from SCOTUS blog, just a little bit brief on that. The opinion is here. I'll throw the opinion in the Discord for you guys. Let's actually do that right now. So you guys can go and check that out. Actually, I'll put that in topic because we do have a topic going on for that. The opinion from the court is in topic chat right now, so you guys go and check that out. We will see what happens with that. From NPR, let's do another one over here from them. In a narrow ruling, Supreme Court hands farm workers union a loss. So we're going to go over a few Supreme Court cases on this. This is from Nina Totenberg and Eric Singerman. And remember, just like I said before, if we get halfway through this article, they will remind you they need your donation because they need to be held up. Because otherwise they will fall apart and they won't be able to pick up great microphones that transmit their quiet voices the way that they do. But we'll see what's happening here. Donate to NPR because they need to spread communist ideals on National Progressive Radio. The Supreme Court on Wednesday tightened the leash on union representatives and their ability to organize farm workers in California and elsewhere. At issue in the case was a California law that allows union organizers to enter farms to speak with workers during non-working hours before and after work, as well as during lunch, for a number of days each year. I think there's a grammatical error there. By a 6-3 vote along ideological lines, the court ruled that the law, enacted nearly 50 years ago after a campaign by famed organizer Cesar Chavez, was unconstitutionally appropriated. Wow, did I read that completely wrong? By a 6-3 vote along ideological lines, the court ruled that the law, enacted nearly 50 years ago after a campaign by a famed organizer, Cesar Chavez, unconstitutionally appropriates private land by allowing organizers to go onto farm property to drum up union support. The regulation appropriates the right to physically invade the grower's property. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote, for the court's conservative majority, the access regulation amounts to simple appropriation of private property. The decision is potentially a mortal blow that threatens the very existence of that farm workers union. However, the ruling stopped short of upending other laws that allow government officials to enter private property to inspect and enforce health and safety rules that cover everything, restaurants to toxic chemical sites. Indeed, as Roberts wrote, under this framework, the government health and safety inspection regimes will generally not constitute takings. The court's decision on Wednesday was only the latest in a series of decisions that have aimed directly at the heart of organized labor in the U.S. In 2018, the court hamstrung public sector unions' efforts to raise money for collective bargaining. In a decision, the court, by a 5-4, overturned the 40-year-old precedent that had allowed unions to collect limited fair share fees from workers not in the union, but who benefited from the terms of the contract that the union negotiated. Well, yeah, that's part of this too, and if I'm not a part of a union, and I'm in a right-to-work state, I don't want the union interfering with me. I know that some of my neocon friends, including my neocon cousin, that I cite all the fucking time on this channel, he counted that as a victory. Yes, we're going to destroy the union with this because even if they're not paying the dues in, the union still has to represent them. I'm like, why? That's wrong. That's theft. If I'm not paying the union leaders money, they better not be representing me. That's theft! And yeah, I understand where the neocons think that this is just a way to kneecap and bust unions. I do understand where they're going for with that. Honestly, no. If I don't want to pay the union, I don't want the representation. I want them out of my life. I thought that's pretty simple, actually. But, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. The case decided by the court on Wednesday began in 2015 at Cedar Point Nursery, near the Oregon border. The nursery's owner, Mike Fonner, said union organizers entered the farm at 5 a.m. one morning without the required notice and began harassing his workers with bullhorns. The general counsel for the United Farm Workers, Mario Martinez, countered that the people with bullhorns were striking workers, not union organizers. When Cedar Point filed a complaint with California Agricultural Labor Relations Board, the board found no illegal behavior and dismissed the complaint. Cedar Point, joined by another California grower, appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, arguing that they should be able to exclude organizers from their farms. Well, yeah, it's private property. Of course it's private property. Of course you should be able to decide who comes on your property and who doesn't. You can decide for anybody else. If you've got a disgruntled worker that you had to escort off the property with police, you can decide if that person gets to come back on your property or not. That's private property rights. That's basic. But that's not the way that these people see things. All right, let's grab another one here. Supreme Court limits when police can enter home without a warrant. From Jessica Gresco. The Supreme Court on Wednesday puts limits on when police officers pursuing a fleeing suspect can enter a home without a warrant. The High Court ruled that when officers are pursuing someone suspected of a misdemeanor, a less serious crime, they cannot always enter a home without a warrant if a suspect enters. The court had previously said that police in hot pursuit of a suspect believed to have committed a more serious crime, a felony, can enter a home without a warrant. I don't like that either, by the way. The case justices enforcement and to groups concerned about privacy. The flight of a suspected misdemeanant does not always justify a warrantless entry into a home. An officer must consider all the circumstances in a pursuit case to determine whether there is a law enforcement emergency. On many occasions, the officer will have a good reason to enter to prevent imminent harms of violence, destruction of evidence, or escape from a home. But when the officer has time to get a warrant, he must do so, even though the misdemeanant fled. Justice Elaine Kagan wrote for the majority of the court. The case before the justices involved a California resident, Arthur Lang. One evening, 2016, officers saw Lang driving a station wagon in Sonoma County, playing music loudly, honking his horn several times. The officer believed those were noise violations, punishable by small fines, and followed Lang. The officer turned his car lights on to get Lang to stop, but Lang continued driving for about 4 seconds, turned into his driveway, and entered into his garage without stopping. The officer got out of his car as Lang's garage door was closing, stuck his foot under the door so it would reopen. Lang was ultimately arrested after the officer smelled alcohol on his breath, and he was charged with driving under the influence as well as an excessive noise offense. Lang offered that the officer's entry into the garage without a warrant violated his Fourth Amendment rights to be free of unreasonable searches and seizures. The case is Lang versus California 20-18. Yeah, and that's one of the things, too. I mean, yeah, the guy shouldn't have been driving if he was that drunk. If he was able to not pass a breathalyzer, he shouldn't have been driving. But, no, there's no excuse. Unless there's a situation where a guy who, under a more minor crime, which I can't imagine that there are situations where that would escalate, because it happens all the time. Somebody gets picked up for some sort of misdemeanor and then finds out that he's a felon out on papers and then demands that he's not going to go back to jail with a knife at the resident's throat. That stuff does happen, but, that's the emergency situation that Kagan talked about as well. If you just walk into your home after somebody saw you have a misdemeanor, come back with a warrant, Fed boy. You have no reason to come here. If the court says you have a reason to come here, I guess we'll have that discussion. But under normal circumstances, for a search, because you saw something happen or you think you saw something happen, no, you don't have a right to come into my home. I don't care what that badge says. So good on the court for that one. All right. Some finance news. Treasury Secretary Yellen pleads with Congress to raise or suspend the debt ceiling. More spending. More spending. You know that national debt? That's still there. And I love the people who come out and say, oh, they're only talking about the national debt because Biden's in office. They didn't talk about it when Trump was in office. Right here, I said, let's not do this stimulus because this is going to put us into deeper national debt. Right here, this guy, who voted for the orange idiot twice, still said, let's not spend this money because it's going to put us into debt. It's from Sarah Ewald Weiss. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen urged Congress Wednesday to address the debt ceiling immediately in order to keep the U.S. from defaulting on its financial obligations. In 2019, President Trump suspended the nation's borrowing limit for 2 years until after the 2020 elections, and that suspension will expire on July 31st, setting off a likely battle in Congress over spending. I would plead with Congress simply to protect the full faith and credit of the U.S. by acting to raise or suspend the debt limit as soon as possible, Yellen said. Yellen's remarks came in testimony before a Senate subcommittee about the Biden admin's proposed 2022 fiscal year budget. She warned that not raising or suspending the debt limit, allowing the country to default, would lead to a financial crisis that would threaten the jobs and savings of Americans who are still recovering from the coronavirus pandemic. We shouldn't have done it under Trump either, by the way. We should not be suspending the debt ceiling. We need to pay off the debt. You remember that glorious time in the 90s? Building on the Reaganomics, when we actually had a balanced budget, and Clinton was paying on the debt. And then we put a war on the credit card because that evil fucking warmongering asshole, George W. Bush, got back into office. But we were paying down the debt. It happened. I saw it. Defaulting on the national debt would be regarded as unthinkable, failing to increase the debt. What are you going to do? What are they going to do if we default on the national debt? Will China just stop selling us stuff? Will we have a manufacturing sector in this country again? Failing to increase the debt limit would have absolutely catastrophic economic consequences, Yellen said. It would be utterly unprecedented in American history for the United States government to default on its legal obligations. Well, you could stop borrowing money. That's an aspect of this. Yellen reminded lawmakers that their move to raise or suspend the debt ceiling wouldn't authorize additional spending, and yet it would still happen, but allows the U.S. to continue paying its bills for prior obligations, money already spent. This comes after the Treasury Department said early last month it would employ so-called extraordinary measures to avoid defaulting on the national debt this summer, but it was uncertain how long those would last due to the uncertainty caused by the pandemic. Well, that shit's never getting fixed. Apparently. Alright, let's keep going. Tamir Rice's mom rips Shaun King for profiting off her son's death. From Mark Lungariello. Tamir Rice's mom slammed Shaun King in a scathing social media post, calling him a self-centered person who can't be trusted, and a white man acting black. Well, where's the lie? Samaria Rice was apparently set off by King publishing details of a conversation they had after she previously blasted King and others, accusing them of benefiting from the death of her 12-year-old son who was shot by Cleveland police while playing with a toy gun. And I hope that they were taken off the force, but I have no faith that that actually happened. Why do you think it's so important to tell folks we had a conversation? Rice wrote in an Instagram post addressed to King. Well, we talked and everything that was said was very toxic and uncomfortable for me to hear. That you raised additional money and then say you did not want to bother me. Personally, I don't understand how you sleep at night, she wrote. I never gave you permission to raise nothing, Rice went on. Along with the United States, you robbed me for the death of my son. Well, I would think that would be the city of Cleveland, not the United States, but, whatever you need to tell yourself. King had posted an episode of his podcast under the title, I Spoke to Samaria Rice this past week, but the episode appears to have been removed from his website. It was a much-needed conversation, he wrote on the page for the episode. I learned a lot, listened a lot, shared my heart, and pledged we would continue to fight to get justice and accountability for Tamir. Samaria Rice started that Tamir Rice Foundation in 2017, 3 years after the death of her son. Rice and King apparently fell out over King's fundraising efforts in the name of Tamir. In a post on his website Tuesday, King outlined how he'd raised a total of about $125,000 through several fundraisers that didn't receive a penny for his efforts. He also had nothing to do with the disbursement of the money, he stated. He added that Rice may have been misled about his efforts. King outlined how he and Rice had met earlier last week after one of the staffers on his team at the Grassroots Law Project worked alongside the Tamir Rice Foundation. So, another grifter getting rich off of somebody else's death. Fun stuff. Alright, we got just a couple more here, and then we will do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. And then go watch the Daily Ignoramus. This one here, Jared Bell of Drake and Josh pleads guilty to charges of crimes against a child. Well, for once it's not always the Disney people. Jared Drake Bell, who played Drake in the Nickelodeon TV show Drake and Josh, pleaded guilty in Cuyahoga, is that how you pronounce that? County Court on Wednesday, on multiple charges related to crimes against a child. Prosecutors say the alleged victim, 15, filed a report with the local police department in Canada in 2018 regarding an incident involving Bell that allegedly happened in Cleveland on December 1st of 2017. Bell, who goes by Drake Campana, tweeted on October 2017 that he was scheduled to play Cleveland's the Odeon Concert Club on December 1st of 2017. The tweet was deleted by the same day the arrest went public. Bell, now 34, entered guilty pleas Wednesday to attempted endangering children, which is a 4th-degree felony, and disseminating matter harmful to juveniles, which is a 1st-degree misdemeanor. If you plead guilty, that is an admission that you did commit these crimes, said Judge Timothy McCormick to Bell via Zoom. Bell could face up to 2 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. Fox 8 learned that several years prior to the alleged incident, Bell and the child had established a relationship. The investigation revealed that months leading up to the concert, Bell allegedly sent the victim inappropriate social media messages. He sent his penis, didn't he? However, on December 1st, 2017, the prosecutor's office said that the concert, Bell violated his duty of care and in doing so created a risk of harm to the victim. Canadian authorities contacted Cleveland law enforcement after the 15-year-old came forward. The Cleveland Division of Police investigated the allegations which led to the charges. Bell has been out on a $2,500 personal bond since his arraignment on June 3rd. Well, wasn't this dude like one of the biggest Nickelodeon stars in the world? For at least a brief period of time? So, I mean, with that being said, I have to question, I mean, that's like $20. But regardless, he's out. And we will see what happens with that as it goes. From Ithaca Journal. India Walton, a socialist candidate poised to become Buffalo's first woman mayor. From John Campbell. India Walton scored an apparent victory Tuesday over four-term incumbent Byron Brown in a Democratic primary for Buffalo mayor, making her poised to become the first woman and first socialist to lead New York's second-largest city. Walton, a nurse and community organizer who directed a Buffalo land trust, led Brown by 1,507 votes with an all in-person votes counted, a near insurmountable margin that almost matched the number of absentee ballots left to tally. With Republicans failing to field the candidate, the primary victory clears the way for Walton to become the mayor in the heavily Democratic city of 260,000 people. Assuming Walton is elected, Buffalo would become the largest American city to have a socialist mayor since Milwaukee in 1960. Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, it makes sense. But I didn't know that. Tonight's results prove that Buffalonians demand community-minded, people-focused government, and we're ready to serve them, Walton said in a statement. For too long, we've seen our city work for politicians, for developers, and for the police union, but not for ordinary working families. Walton continued, in our city, everyone will have a seat at the table. Well, I'm interested to watch. I'm interested to see where this goes. So let's grab some popcorn and let's watch the show. All right, last one, and then we will do a thing that I like and thing that I hate and head out of here for the day. It's a long show. We're pushing on 2 hours again, mostly because I had a lot to say about Biden and his gun control. Remember, those support links are there. Help me get that F15, because, man, I could go for that F15. I need to stand up to the government, and I need to have an F15 and nuclear weapons to do so. And I just can't bring myself to bear the ethical implications of having nuclear weapons, personally. DeSantis signs law requiring college faculty students to take surveys on beliefs. From Ivana Sarik. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed legislation requiring state colleges and universities to annually survey their students, faculty, and staff about their beliefs to ensure viewpoint diversity and intellectual freedom. The legislation doesn't specify for what the survey results will be used, but at a press conference on Tuesday, DeSantis said schools found to be indoctrinating students aren't worth tax dollars and not something we're going to be supporting going forward. The survey will assess the extent to which competing ideas and perspectives are presented and determine whether students, faculty, and staff feel free to express their beliefs and viewpoints on campus and in the classroom per the legislation. DeSantis said Tuesday the bills would prevent the state schools from becoming hotbeds of for stale ideology. He added that it's now the norm for schools to be intellectually repressive environments that promote orthodoxies, though he didn't specify which orthodoxies are being promoted. Communism, socialism, statism, or which schools have this problem per the Tampa Bay Times. The law goes into effect on July 1st. The survey will be conducted annually with reports published each September, starting September 1st of 2022. So, with that, I don't know. I mean, DeSantis has some of the right ideas. He really seems to. Like, okay, let's see if we can find a way to diversify the colleges. Let's make sure that there's no vaccine passport here so people can freely engage in commerce in our state. Let's strike down the mask mandate. Let's make sure that everything else is off of here. Let's go punish the cities that do the mask mandates. And that's all well and good, but really, honestly, the more popular DeSantis becomes, I've noticed that he becomes more top-down the more popular he becomes. And I don't know if I care for that too much. I'm not going to lie. And I like Ron DeSantis, and I like his policy prescriptions. It's just there are certain avenues he's supposed to be going through to do some of this stuff, and he should be leaving some more of this down to his municipalities, and I don't like the fact that he's doing it up from the top. And I really, really, really don't like the idea of him being president anymore. And maybe he'll redeem himself. I know the conservatives love him, but I don't like the idea of him running for president at this point, if he keeps doing stuff like this. And I like the stuff. It's just the methodology he's doing it by. I don't care for. I don't care for it at all. But here this comes, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of this in the months to come as we start to figure out whether or not he's going to be the nominee. All right, that's it for the news. Let's do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate and head out of here for the day. By the way, you guys were awesome in the chat today. I've been kind of paying attention to this as well, so a couple new follows too. That's cool. You guys rock. All right, thing that I like today. I laughed so hard when I heard the story. Reporter gets lab to test Subway tuna sandwiches. The lab found no identifiable human DNA, or tuna DNA. Not human DNA, of course. There's no human DNA. The lab found no identifiable tuna DNA. I seem to remember the story from long ago. But for whatever reason, the Blaze is just getting around to it now. This is from Sarah Taylor. All right, let's get up to the top. Fast food sandwich chain Subway is currently facing a class action lawsuit over the contents of the tuna product the company offers its customers. The weekend New York Times report took a look at what goes into the eatery's tuna offerings and even had some sandwiches tested by a lab. The Times said the lab found no identifiable tuna DNA in the tuna sandwiches the paper had tested. For the report, Times reporter Julia Carmel purchased 60 inches of Subway tuna sandwiches from 3 different franchisees all across Los Angeles. Carmel noted that when she removed the tuna from the sandwiches, froze it, and then paid $500 for analysis from a third-party commercial food testing lab to conduct a PCR test to determine the composition of the food. The lab, she said, was already wary of the challenges of identifying a fish that's been cooked at least once, mixed with mayo, frozen, and shipped across the country, but agreed to the testing regardless. The lab, its identity not disclosed, tested the fish over a period of 30 days and determined that no amplifiable tuna DNA was present at the sample, and thus the lab did not obtain any amplification products from the DNA. Therefore, the lab concluded in its finding, we cannot identify the species. A spokesperson for the lab told Carmel that 2 different conclusions could be possible based on the results. One, it's so heavily processed that whatever we could pull out, we couldn't make an identification, the spokesperson said, or we got some out and there was just nothing there that's tuna. Carmel noted that there are major caveats considering when looking at the results of such testing. Once tuna has been cooked, its DNA becomes denatured, meaning the fish's characteristic properties have likely been destroyed, making it difficult, if not impossible, to identify, she reported. A January report from the Seafood List, which compiled by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, defines 15 different species of fish that can be labeled as tuna. Carmel in the report also added that the lawsuit's plaintiffs over the last several months have also reportedly softened their original claims, and instead claiming that there's no tuna in Subway's tuna offerings. They are now questioning whether the product is skipjack and yellowfin tuna, as the company has previously insisted. This is what the New York Times spent their money on. Whether or not the $5 sandwich, or I think it's up to $6 now, but the cheap sandwich that you got from the cheap sandwich shop actually has tuna in it. This is what they spent their time and money on, people. This is what you get when you buy a subscription to the New York Times, a former newspaper. You get Julie Carmel buying 5 tuna sandwiches and sending them to a lab. And there are other steps to this too. Now, it says right in the article that she bought the sandwiches, froze them, and then sent them to the lab. That's also going to affect the processing. And yeah, the lab came out and said it's so heavily processed. This is not fresh tuna steaks that Subway's getting. I hate to tell you this. They're not getting ahi. when it goes on your $6 sandwich. They're getting whatever cheap chicken of the fucking sea, or their own probably internal brand, which might be the same thing as chicken of the fucking sea, but they're getting whatever cheap fucking chicken of the sea they can get out of a can from the Cisco dealer, who's local to the area, but whatever big industrial 5-pound can of tuna they can get off there, and sticking a 5-pound jug of mayo in with it, and a couple of the seasonings, and picking it up with an ice cream scoop and sticking it into a loaf of fresh baked bread. That also, by sugar content, cannot be claimed as bread in Ireland. We talked about that, I think last year that was. This is clown world. This is true clown world. But yeah, I mean, by the time it's caught, it's cooked the first time, it's canned, which also cooks it a second time. It comes back out of the can, gets scooped up, and then frozen again, and then taken back and tested. You have no idea what's in this fish. You have to go up the supply chain to figure out what the fuck is in there. So the next part I would say is go ask the manufacturer, but having a lab test this was pointless. You obviously know nothing about culinary arts or meat or denaturing or anything else like that. And all I can do is sit back at this and laugh my ass off. This is hilarious. But the next one is not hilarious. In fact, this is the thing that I hate. So let's do a thing that I hate. So this woman, and I'm taking this tweet from Petite Nicoco over on Twitter, said she checked her TikTok and she's serious. I can't even make an introduction for this video. You have to hear it for yourself. And it's horrifying. Somebody needs to take this woman's kids away from her.
So this morning, the baby woke up and had some sort of violence in her heart. I don't know what it was, but she has been losing her mind all day. And it's interesting because I'm watching her lose her mind, and then I'm watching the preteen respond to that by trying to make her happy. And I have had to actively tell him, stop trying to make her feel better, stop responding to her tears. It's so interesting to see the conditioning of people responding to white girl tears happening so early. She's 5, and she's got an 11-year-old coming after her trying to make her feel better when she cries. We have to unlearn this whole business that white women crying is going to get them what they want in life, because that ain't it. So this morning, the baby...
That's demonic, dude. That's horrifying. And one of the things that just... It pushes me the wrong way so hard, and it makes you so mad. I mean, yes, okay, we need to understand that us reacting to white girls and white girl tears aren't going to get them what they want. This is an infant. There is one way for that infant to communicate with you. One way. This infant has not learned speech, has not learned speech patterns. If something is wrong, there is one way for that infant to communicate with you, and it's up to you as the responsible adult to try to determine what that is. Because they can't tell you any, she can't go up to you and say, I just crapped myself, can you change me? She can't come up and say, I need a bottle, I'm hungry. The infant can't do that. This is not Family Guy. We don't have an infant that can talk like Stewie, which I've never determined. Can the adults actually understand Stewie or not? I don't know. This is sickening. Take this woman's kids away from her. And the fact that she had to do it about race, too. Ugh. It's not just so much of, well, we can't condition people to say that we don't take care of babies when babies act up. It's we can't condition white girl tears get you whatever the fuck you want. Fuck you. I hope this is parody, but Nikoko came out, and I don't have TikTok, so I can't go back and check that. But Nikoko came out and said that she checked that, and I'll take her word for it because I can't go back and verify it myself. But I hope to God this is parody. I really do. Nikoko seems to say it's legit, but I pray to God this is parody. This has got to be parody. Please tell me that we haven't slipped this far as a society. That this is not parody. Please, please, somebody restore my faith in humanity and tell me that this is not parody. I don't have faith that that can happen. But that's the end of the show. Black pills away. Let's get out of here. All right, well, that was a depressing end of the program here, so maybe I'll start doing a thing I hate first and then do a thing that I like, because that was really depressing. I'm sad. Now I have to go to work, and I'm sad. I'm sad for this woman and the kids that she's around. I'm very sad. Anyway, let's head out of here. There is going to be a Saturday stream. It'll be at 5:30 Central Time. I'll get that probably set up later on today so we can start sharing that around. And that's going to be a live chat time, so definitely make sure that you're in there. 5:30 p.m. Central Time this coming Saturday. And we'll take live chat. We might take Discord calls too. I'm not going to open the phone lines yet. Just after the last time I opened the phone lines, we had somebody who decided to be unscrupulous, so we're not going to do the phone lines yet, but we'll do some Discord calls here. So if you're not in the Discord, get in the Discord, head on over there and come and hang out with us. Otherwise, that's going to be a complete live chat day, so come back in and hang out. Otherwise, we'll be back here tomorrow with more contemporary and live chat day as well. So make sure that if you're lurking right now, get those last minute messages in, so I can thank you personally tomorrow and get it in the notebook. Definitely looking forward to that. Otherwise, we will see you here tomorrow for more contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.